Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the CASAS 2021 National Summer Institute. This is a presentation called Developing Career Pathways and Executive Functioning Skills. Your presenter today is Lori Strumpf, President of Strumpf Associates Center for Strategic Change. Lori.
Thanks, Janice, and good morning, everybody. I am glad to see you figuratively. I don't know if you've joined other sessions and how you've done it, but if you have a question and you want to put it in the chat, I may call on you to ask it because I like to engage. And then if you would turn on your video, if you can, that would be terrific. So I see a lot of people putting in there where they're from, and a lot of you are from, of course, adult schools, and I am happy to see you. And usually if I'm in a room, I ask how many people are from different places, but I appreciate that you're putting that in the chat. So if we can go to the next slide, as Janice said, and the slide says, this is developing career pathways and executive functioning skills. When they asked me to do this workshop on career pathways, I was really thinking hard about what's the new information that I can provide people, because career pathways have been around in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act for 4 or 5 years, and even before that. So I would like people to kind of jump in, put in the chat if you have a question or you want me to focus on something specifically, because I don't want the information to be just too general. But I did think that I would start with key talent development challenges for the next, for the 21st century. I think all of us have heard in the newspapers, and we've been reading that right now there is it used to be that there was a skills gap. Now we just have a talent supply issue. We have employers who are begging for workers, and we have a whole bunch of workers who are not getting those jobs. Some of it has to do with a skills gap, but a lot of it has to do with we are just not doing a good match between open jobs and the current workforce that is unemployed. And I know there's been a lot of talk about the fact that a lot of that is happening because people are getting extra unemployment insurance. I believe that that's everybody. I think that is some people, but for those of you that don't know the number, 3 million women left the workforce due to the pandemic. And many of those women want to work, but they still have childcare issues at home. They have homeschooling issues at home, and they can't get back into the workforce. So we have a workforce shortage. But as that all clears itself out due to the post-pandemic, we're also going to have other key development challenges, which is aligning education and workforce training with industry needs. I think that all of us understand that the pandemic really catalyzed moving into the 21st century and the kinds of skills that people are going to need, digital skills and communication skills, and relationship building skills that may be done differently than in an office. And so we need to be able to address the skills gap that may in fact grow and the mismatches that will happen. Another key development challenge is informing career decisions of job seekers, students, and workers, because uninformed decisions are costly to everyone. And right now, because of the pandemic, many people are thinking of changing careers or jobs. I just recently wrote something on LinkedIn about that and about what people need to do as they're thinking about changing their careers or our ability to inform people around making the right decisions. And then the future of work, which some of us thought was going to be what we thought was going to be maybe another 5 years down the road. Automation certainly has just hit us like a lead balloon, so to speak. It's right now today. And I do see that Daniel wrote one of the key issues that some of our students are applying for jobs which requires technology skills to apply. And I'm with you. That's the whole future of work. Automation and artificial intelligence is not far behind Daniel and others. And you know, here's the thing. I think it is our job to teach people how to use automation. I think it is our job not to say things like, well, we didn't put our applications online, our programs, because our people can't fill them out online. It's our job to provide opportunities for them to practice customer satisfaction surveys online, our applications online, practice filling out job seeking applications online. Employers are not going to change that. It's going to happen more and more. So Daniel, are you there? Can you, do you want to say anything else about that before we move on? I really like to hear from the audience.
No, I think you basically pinpointed it about teaching it. One of the EL Civics co-ops is digital literacy and how to use it. And so for the last 2 years, that was one of our major co-ops that we've been using, because it is a change, it's a transition in education where, you know, we can no longer ignore technology. We really got to teach it to the students. You know?
Well, and
so we've been trying pretty aggressively.
I mean, and look at us, here we are, Zoom meetings, all of that. And I worry so much about the fact that our own organizations don't have all the right equipment. I mean, I work in some places where they still don't, they say that case managers can't even text the students because the organization can't control what they're gonna say or something. I mean, we just got to get over ourselves, don't you think? I mean, in some ways. So automation is here to stay, and it is our job. And we're going to get back to a kind of list of what are the key skills that we need. But if we can go to the next slide, and again, thank you for putting that in the chat. Anybody else who wants to communicate, please do that. So I think I came at this thinking we all know what career pathways are, but I thought we should just make sure that we're all on the same page. So they have the goal of increasing an individual's education and skill attainment with employment as the outcome. And so we want to make sure that we're not just doing career pathways as a curricular event. It really is about getting people into jobs. And it is a series of connected education and training strategies with support services and that help people know what the path is from one job to another within an industry sector or across those industries. I'm going to show you examples of some. I see Janice though, she writes, how can you teach digital literacy if you do not have access? I work in a prison where inmates do not have access to technology. That is a great question, and I think it's a challenge. I don't doubt that. And I think you have to just talk about it. You have to tell them that some of that's awareness, right? So it's not teaching the digital literacy necessarily because they can't practice with technology, but it is informing prisoners, or what will be hopefully ex-offenders, what they will face on the outside, that they will in fact face a day where they will have to fill out job applications online. Well, they will face what the new automation looks like. And even if you can just show slides, I mean, this is like the worst way to do this kind of technology teaching. But if you can even just show slides about what that might look like, because some of it is even, I mean, so I don't know how old people are on this Zoom thing, but I'm old. And I remember when ATMs first came into being. Now, some of you are going to laugh because you were like, ATMs didn't exist. They'd never existed. No, there was a time where they did not exist. And one of the things that was important about all the banks, they wanted their ATMs, at least when you initially walked up to them, to look the same. Because if you learned how to do it once, visually it mattered, not just the how do you punch in those things. And so even if you just help them with the visualization of what it's going to look like with a PowerPoint slide, or some even, like people have learned how to play the piano on pretend keyboards that are just on a piece of cardboard paper. So maybe you do that. I don't know. It's a great question though, because technology needs to have certainly some access where people can see it. So did anybody else have any other ideas? Laura wrote, I agree with Lori, do not have the capability on our end to enable usage of technology. I'd like to hear from people about that. I mean, my ideas are just some, but what do other people think? Anybody? Laura or Janice?
I like your idea, Lori, of giving them like a manipulative to use, to like a cardboard paper of something that sort of looks like a computer screen. Because let's say they're doing touch screen applications or whatever, right? At least it gives them the opportunity to touch buttons, even though they're not real buttons, and a chance to practice in that way, I guess.
Yes, I mean, it's the best you can do, right? But we all know, you're all educators, that visualization matters. So they've touched something, right, Janice? It may not
Right.
move, but it doesn't, it's not the best, but they got some sense of that from a tactical point of view. So I did see somebody wrote, maybe prisons will start letting them use technology. I worked in a prison, a maximum security prison in the state of Florida many, many, many years ago, but I doubt they'll start letting them use technology. They're fearful of other things that can happen, so.
They're actually working on it where I work. I work at the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, and they have finally given the teachers access to the internet in their classroom. That is a huge step forward for them, but.
Oh, well, yeah, that is great, Janice. Well, thank you for that. And Paul just put a link to an article about digital literacy in prison. So we'll come back to this because I have a list of skills and digital literacy is certainly one. But thank you for engaging. I'm so excited that people are talking. So thank you so much. Can we go to the next slide?
Of course.
So when you're really developing career pathways, and let me say that there's a difference between an individual instructor or case manager or career coach that knows what the career pathways are for a particular industry like healthcare, and having a organizational ethic that focuses on career pathways and has already develop the career pathways so every individual instructor doesn't have to figure it out themselves, or doesn't miss a step, or doesn't miss an occupation that might be helpful. And so when I'm talking about the development of career pathways, I'm talking about it from an institutional organizational perspective, where the organization has jointly developed the career pathways with employers, nonprofit partners, but particularly has engaged employers to say, if I'm in manufacturing and we start here at an entry-level job, what's the next job that they can go to? What's the next job that they can go to? What's the next job that they can go to? What are the skills? What are the transferable skills? What are the certifications or certificates that are required? And what's the on and off ramp, so that if I don't want to go all the way to being, I'm going to use health, a nurse, I want to get my first certificate, then I can go to an off ramp and get a job in that area, and then come back and get the next certification and the next. So this is an organizational perspective. It's not reliant on every teacher, case manager, career coach knowing what the next steps are, because that is not fair to the students who may not get somebody who knows all of it. But the other is resources should then be posted on the institution's website, where the career pathways are depicted so students can get them. And I don't mean a gazillion. I mean that I work under the auspices primarily when I work with WIOA, I think about it from the perspective of the Workforce Board. And in most areas, the Workforce Board has identified 3, 4, or 5 targeted industries, and they've identified them because they're high growth, high demand, and can lead to high wage employment. And so if you know what those targeted industries are for your region, then those are the career pathways that you should be visualizing, helping your students, customers, clients see. And I'll show some visualizations in a moment about what I mean about that. So if we could go to the next slide, that'd be great, Janice, thank you.
Sure.
So I do want to ask this question and have people kind of weigh in here, but how have career pathways been built in your service delivery approach? And what are the challenges to designing career pathways as part of your program? So you can either write in the chat or you can just, there's a little thing where you can put your hand up in Zoom. Is that, yes, that is activated, but what are some of the career pathways that have been built in your organization or program? And what are some of the challenges you face in building career pathways? Anybody? Oh, I see a hand up. So yes, I don't know who that is, but go ahead. Oh, Daniel. Daniel, great, you're back. Daniel, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, I seem to be talking a lot. Anyway, our career pathways have been built primarily culinary at this point. We do have technology as well, and we are in the process of developing our parent education pathway. We had a CNA, certified nurse assistant, but we lost our teacher, so we're still in the process of trying to find that. But yeah, we try to create a variety of different classes at different times of the day where students can come and learn. We also try to encourage them to take ESL classes as well, if depending on their English ability. Some of the challenges that we are having is the job part of it, where our culinary chef is very into, we live in the Monterey area, and he knows a lot, he has a lot of connections, but often the connections for jobs that he has is not what the students want. So that's one of our challenges, is trying to find a career pathway where the students are really making sure what they know, what they want when they get into culinary. So and some are just taking it for the fun of it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, but that gets back to the very first slide about making sure that people are informed and that they're not just going into these classes just for the fun of it. But did you work with employers? I mean, I hear that your teacher is very smart about the career pathway, but did you work with any employers in the area? Or, I mean, how did you know what the first job was, and then what the second job could lead to, and then the third job?
Yes, so through our teacher, he has opened up, well, I shouldn't say opened up, but he's contacted certain companies as well as we have. I mean, basically, he's kind of our middleman. So he's the one that's basically told us these are what's available at this point. And it's, a variety of whether you're going to work as a prep cook or actual chef, or, and there's hotels, there's restaurants, there's, different possibilities depending on what the student wants. But yeah, I think the challenge is trying to just get it maybe, I don't know, I don't want to say more organized, because I feel like we are pretty organized, but I don't know, there's something that's kind of falling through the cracks. and I don't know if I can actually pinpoint what it is.
Well, let's think if there may be something that, I mean, I'm all about, I should have said this at the beginning, but for me, these kinds of workshops, or if you walk away with one tip, technique, or insight, it's been worth it, right? This is not about everybody on this call is smart and knows stuff. So maybe I'll give you one insight that you'll say, oh, maybe that could be helpful. I see others have said medical coding, billing, pharmacy, tech. Somebody said early childhood education, which is an example I'm going to show you later. But did anybody else want to weigh in on what some of the challenges are? So Daniel said that, challenges of recruiting staff, obtaining grants, funding for programs, getting employer input. Anybody else? Challenges about building career pathways?
Yes.
Yes, sis?
Hi. One of the challenges that we face is we're working with adult schools, community colleges, and a job workplace. And so even though we all have good intentions and we all want to collaborate successfully, we all work within different systems. And so sometimes we take for granted that because we think a certain way, that's from our system, and we need to better understand the job place or the community college. I'm from an adult school. Yeah.
And who was that was speaking? I'm sorry.
My name is
Kathy.
Kathy.
What? I'm sorry.
Kathy Fry.
Oh, hi, Kathy. Sorry, I didn't catch it at first and I couldn't see it. And so, yes, I do think working across systems, I mean, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act was supposed to help with that, but it doesn't really as much as it should. So I appreciate that. Others are saying that challenges are finding instructors, and you're finding the same workforce shortage that all of the employers are talking about. Peg, I see that your hand is up. Do you want to speak a little?
Hi, Lori. Yeah, thanks. I'm from New Jersey, and I know there is at least one other person I think on here from New Jersey. But in my county, I did labor market research because I just, recently wrote for Title II and included IET. And we've been doing IET before IET even existed and going through many, many iterations of it. And every time we hit on something that sticks with the students, the state says, well, this cert is no longer allowed. So currently 60% of the available jobs through 2026, so a 5-year forward study, show in my county, warehousing, home health care, not home health aid, home health care, and fast food service are the available jobs, 60%. Basic ServSafe is not allowed in New Jersey. You have to do ServSafe managerial, which I already do at my program, so that's not a problem. But the point is, warehousing, OSHA 10 isn't accepted. Most of the certs that are affiliated with these entry-level jobs are not accepted. And my kind of, question is, how can an IET program and economy be successful if it is executive weighted? So if we're training people who barely speak English within an 8-month time period to have not only all of their documents together and the language needed for something such as a Black Seal certification in 8 months with 0 English or next to 0 English, and then prepare them. Black Seal is more of a middle level or upper level job. Where is the connection between an IET to get people started in the workforce and the certifications that we're expected to provide for people?
Well, I can't solve that problem, Peg. I'm thrilled to have you speak about it. I think this gets bigger than anything else, which is advocacy at the state level, right? If they've decided, and there is a tension here. I mean, I don't know if we have any state people on this call, but I'm known for being all about local control. So it's always my favorite thing to do is to say that states are making mistakes. But in this particular instance, there is a labor market tension, Peg, which is we should not be training people and then spending 8 or 9 months and then putting them in jobs that there is no forward movement, and they continue to be below the poverty level, continue to be in less than self-sufficiency jobs, and continue not to have opportunities for to ultimately, within a period of time, make us a family sustaining or a self-sustaining wage. That's the state and the workforce board's policy pull, and I don't disagree with that. The other, though, is we have people that are starting so far down the continuum that if you can't get credit for some of the things that you're doing with them and those certifications, then we are either missing that whole group of people and they're still in poverty and all of that. So, but I do think it's important to understand that tension between what the labor market need is for, about what our job should be, which is to be moving people out of poverty and into ultimately family sustaining wages. I don't know where the 8-month thing comes from either, and we probably don't have enough time to go into it, but because I run some programs, and we keep people for 2 years if we need to move them along. It's not an adult basic ed program, it's a WIOA funded program, but you know, this thing where you have to get rid of them at the end of a year just doesn't work for me either. But I think there's an advocacy issue, Peg, but the advocacy has to come with understanding that there is a policy push, and rightfully so, to move people into high demand, high wage, ultimately on a pathway where they can get family sustaining wages. Do you understand that?
I mean, yeah, and I have the New Jersey list of accepted certifications in front of me. I keep it next to me, but it's things like Lean Gold certification. I'm not even sure what that is. I can read the words, but I wouldn't be able to walk in at this point.
Well, I think some of those are, I mean, lean, that's ridiculous, but I mean, it's not ridiculous for you and me, but
to get back to the point of this relevant conversation here in this space is, okay, we can't argue with the information. I mean, fast food is a growing industry in my county that has part of the 60% of available jobs. But if I can't run an IET or certification program to get students to fill those jobs, what would a viable alternative be outside of state advocacy and DOL, WDB advocacy? Because that's almost on a different plane.
Well, yes, I understand that. Well, I mean, but if you're getting people jobs, do you have to get them the certifications?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a conundrum. I wish I had a better answer. Let me keep thinking about it and I come back to it. And others may have something to say too. Cindy, I see your hand is up. Cindy Dixon.
Thank you, Lori.
Thanks, Peg.
Hi, I'm from a very rural area. Well, I work in a very rural area in Northern California. Basically, where all the big major fire was last year is the area that I work in. But they have the forestry department out there, which has all kinds of jobs. And we have education out there for the school. We have no other jobs. So it makes it really hard to make pathways to go where. So, trying to teach them, a lot of people, I just started doing a computer literacy program up there, but we have also the issue of people living out in the middle of nowhere that have no internet access. They have no phone access sometimes.
Yep.
So, it makes it hard to do pathways.
Well, but there's a pathway in forestry. I mean, so.
Right. And the forestry, yeah, that's a big draw. So especially firefighting up there, you have that draw. And forestry will help train. They also work with the school. I work pre-K through adult ed up there. And they also work with Trinity County altogether doing the SAR program, search and rescue program, which I have many high schoolers involved in and adult ed involved in.
Right. And then there's, even if you are in a rural area, there's safety and rescue. Forestry is a big thing, but I guess what I would say to you, Cindy, is you got to work with what you've got. But even in the forestry itself, there's a lot of pathways. There's fire, there's rescue, there's those things. And then if people are
Paramedics.
Thanks, Daniel. There's
Corrections.
Thank you, Janice. And there must be hospitality somewhere. There must be. And if you don't have the other issue that you have to get them certifications, there's lots of pathways. I mean, people belittle retail and hospitality jobs. I never have in the workforce field, because that is a way to get started on your way to management or on your way to self-entrepreneurship, where you can own a franchise if you choose to do that. But there's many pathways in hospitality and retail, and so there must be some of that. But even within just the there's only forestry, there's more than just becoming a forest ranger. I may not be using the right job title. There's all the other things we've been talking about in terms of that. So I think you work with what you've got, and if that's not what people are interested in, you need to look around and help them understand what are some other pathways in other places in the state if they're willing to move. But otherwise, work with what you've got. And it seems like there is some things you can do in that venue. All right, I'm gonna move us along a little bit. Thank you again. I'm very appreciative. And oh, who said that? Peg said something about who's been working hospitality and retail. Absolutely, those people are heroes. All right, let's go to the next slide. So again, I'm speaking to this in terms of the broader organizational system, but I just like this slide because of the pictures, what needs to change. We need to go from typewriters to computers. We've talked about, or pads actually, digital literacy. But as all of you know, under WIOA, which Adult Basic Education is under, there had been a focus on GED or high school diploma as the ultimate goal. And then you don't get credit for that in terms of the long term, because we are trying to prepare people in terms of that kind of labor market push for preparation for college. And I don't mean four-year college. I mean technical school, certifications, post-secondary kinds of less than 4-year, more than a high school diploma. So in that kind of 2-year space, and career success. Sequential programs need to go away. People shouldn't be having to do classroom training before they can do a work-based learning experience, before they can get a job, but we need to be accelerating and doing concurrent programs where people can, if people need money and they want to go to work, if we do a work experience where we're actually subsidizing the wages, people don't have to have all the skills they would need because it's a learning experience. Can we go back to the other slide?
Sorry, my mouse moved.
Thank you. Where they can be in a work experience and in classroom training if they have the capability to do that. We need to move from light advising to robust and wraparound support services in terms of what we need to do to change. I know that in adult basic ed, primarily there's open entry, open exit offerings. I believe in open entry, open exit, but I also believe in that open entry, open exit to manage cohorts, so that if several people have come in on a Tuesday, that you try to keep them together as a cohort, because there's lots of research that shows that people learn better when they are together in the cohort that they have become comfortable with and can learn together. And then current, sometimes no formal connection to the labor market, and we need employer verified pathways. And Daniel, when you were talking before about your instructor in culinary, he's got lots of contacts, but it's not the contacts that some of the students really want, whatever those jobs are that he can get connected to. So I do think it's incumbent upon the organization. And again, remember, I'm talking from an organizational point of view, not an individual instructor point of view, to find potentially other opportunities that the instructor may not have, and build those relationships with those employers on behalf of the organization. Because again, if it's all instructor based, what happens when that person goes away? What happens when he or she decides to quit or gets hit by a bus, sorry, but you know what I'm saying? Then all that institutional knowledge for the employer linkages walk out the door. And so the institution needs to have them, not just the instructor. Does that make sense, Daniel? Maybe he went.
Yes, yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Went
Yes,
to a
it does.
coffee break. I thought maybe
No,
he went on a coffee
No,
break.
no, I was typing something actually.
Somebody also wrote there's a pathway in corrections too, Janice. Thank you for that, because there's a great pathway in corrections if people want to do that as well. So let's move to the next slide. So again, we've touched on this, but sector strategies matter. And so in my world of workforce development, where I really come at this from the workforce development side, not just the education and adult basic education side, that we really need to think in our institutions, what are the high demand, high potential, high wage industries. Again, your workforce board, if you have connections with them, have done a lot of that research. Somebody talked about they did the research, but then again, the state in New Jersey doesn't certify for all of those things. Forestry is the only thing, but it's about a sector strategy around health or manufacturing, finance, forestry, whatever those sectors are, and then building viable pathways in the sectors. It's not just thinking about job for job. Most of you seem to have done that because most of your answers were within, when I asked before about what your career pathways are in, you mostly answered with sector language. So, and again, for those of you that don't know, the workforce boards in most areas, not everywhere, but in most areas have done a lot of the labor market research, and they would know what the high demand, high wage sectors are, and you don't really have to do that research on your own. So if we could go to the next slide. So the key elements of a successful pathway should include an introduction to career opportunities. Again, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but in the region's high wage, high demand employment sectors. So part of a career pathway is introducing folks to students, learners, job seekers. What are the job opportunities that will lead to a career? And then what are the essential workplace skills and basic academic skills needed to succeed? A transition to entry-level skills training, and then moving beyond that. Internships, I'm using the word internships, work-based learning, whatever way you think of it, work experience, and employment. And then a pathway, even if it may not be back to your program, but a pathway for continuing to upgrade their training. If we're putting people on a pathway, we may not be getting everybody to be a certified registered nurse, but we may be getting somebody to the LPN. Part of our program should show people what the off-ramp is and how to get back on the on-ramp to get to continued upgrading and training, not just do the certification at one place on the pathway and then they get a job and we're done with them. Providing information about the on-ramp, back to the on-ramp, and where they go. And that's why I think these things should all be on websites. People should be seeing them on websites and be able to go back and see them again. So can we go to the next slide, I think? Key elements. Oh, so Janice, I'm gonna now make you crazy. I don't mean to. Janice of CASAS. But I'm gonna get to the executive functioning part. But what I'd like to do, if we could skip to page 15 or slide 15, Janice, and then we'll come back to the executive functioning. Do you mind?
Sure. So forward ahead in the in the PowerPoint presentation to 15.
Yes. Can we
when to stop?
Right now? She and I practiced, and now I'm throwing her curveball. So I don't mean to do that, but I've decided that I want to jump ahead.
Okay.
So can you just hit your just
Yep.
scroll through?
10, 11, 12.
12. We can all count. 13. We'll count with you. 14. And then you're going to have to go backwards. Sorry to tell you.
That's okay. I've got a new mouse. I can do it. Go ahead.
So I wanted to give you some kind of examples. When I say pathway should also be visual, we did, Strumpf Associates did a pathway project in early childhood education. Janice, you have a question? I see you. Janice Webb,
Can you?
Janice
Yeah.
CASAS.
It's nice to see another Janice, by the way. Can you please post that link into the chat so we can get to it? Please.
I am sure, I don't control it, but I'm sure the other Janice knows how to do this, and she will do this in a moment. But I wanted to show you, I've got a couple samples, but I want to spend a little time on this one because we have had such a good engagement on the pathway conversation. So Janice, CASAS Janice, not Janice Corrections Janice. See, I heard you, Janice. Can you click on the link or whatever we do to bring the link up to the document? And others can see it. So can we go to the very front page of the document? So this is more than I might expect all of you to do, but I wanted to show you the visualization. If you can go to page 3 now, and you can find this on my website. So for us, early childhood education has put out a set of competencies for what you can be to be what they generically call an educator 1, an educator 2, an educator 3 level in early childhood education. And so we created this way of visualizing a pathway because you can click, we're not going to do it here, but this is a PDF, but when it's on the website of the place we did this for, as they're getting it organized, you could click on each of those circles and you would be able to see what the competencies are, what the wages are, and where you can go get training. So you go from educator 1 to 2 to 3 to a curriculum specialist to a coach. And you see that these are all supported at the bottom by foundational attributes and personal effectiveness kinds of skills. And so what we did was we outlined not just this is what it looks like to move, but if you can go to the next page, Janice, we took each of the competencies because the competencies were already defined by the Early Education Association people. And we took them and said, if your job title is curriculum specialist, instructional leader, and the standard is childhood development and learning in context, and then you see 1A, 1B, 1C, those are all the kind of competency levels. Here's what you can do if you're at a level 1, and here's what you can do if you're at level 2. Now, that's going further than what most career pathways do, but it's the visualization, and then if you know the competencies, and then how do they apply at each level. So this is one, and it's available to you on our website at that link. I think I saw 2 people who said early childhood education was something they had pathways in. If we can go back to the PowerPoint for just a moment, Janice, and go to the next slide, 16. Not backwards, but forward. So here's another look at what a visualization would look like as a career pathway for software tester or quality assurance. And they did it more visual, different than we did. We have a picture, but manual tester, automation tester, but this is a visualization. And because I'm all about providing information to students that they can self-obtain or we do side by side with them, on each of these, if you did this, you would be able to click, just like you could on our blue circles, you could click on manual tester, for instance, and you could see what were the skills that you need, what are the certifications that you need. And if you adapted it locally, you might even have a Google map that could show them where they could get the training or certifications that they need. So it's not just the picture, but it's an interactive methodology to show the pathway and to let people see it. And then if you can just go to the next slide for just a moment, Janice, thank you. Finding out pathways within the industry, we've talked about it, but how would you go about it and how would you have gone about it? We'll come back to that in just a minute, but can we go to the very next slide, Janice? And so this is a written out one. I don't love these this way. I really think they should be visual, but it helps to, this is a healthcare example. So healthcare has 3 basic pathways: patient care, allied health, and medical administration. Again, I'm doing this from the generic. I've talked to many healthcare people around the country. You would do it locally through focus groups, bringing various healthcare providers together. Their language may be different. And then this is a narrative way of talking about a career pathway: patient care, you enter at a certified nurse assistance, then you can go from LPN to LVN, emergency medical tech and paramedics, and then registered nurse, and then a BA in nursing. I would take this. I didn't do it for this because I wanted to show the difference between a narrative one and if you have visual ones. But I would then make a graphic of this. And again, it would be interactive. You could click on certified nurse assistants. You could see where you could get the training. You could see what the skills were. You could see what the certifications were. You could see how long it might take. So if we go back to slide 17, Janice, she's going to kill me. So I would love to hear from people, like if you've got visualizations, if they are interactive, if they're on your website, if looking at it this way is helpful. And if you've talked to employers, again, institution-wise, to understand what the pathways are and how you're advising your students and job seekers. But anybody, visualization, what they look like? No? All right, well, Janice Webb, not CASAS Janice, you can click on the link to the early education one, and you can see it on our website, and you can certainly download it and use it if you want to, or model it. Any comments? All right, well then I'm going to keep us going here. So now, Janice, if you would go back to slide 9. Okay. So we said that there were kind of 2 things we were going to talk about here today. They're interrelated, but the big picture thing is career pathways, how you develop them, what they are, how to present them to learners, how to help people know them. And we also were going to talk about executive functioning skills and the kinds of skills that people need. And so how many folks have heard of executive functioning skills? You can just wave, hands up. Well, I don't see everybody, but yes, Daniel, yes, Laura, yes, Janice. Executive functioning skills are the skills that people need to be able to plan, to manage their time, to have a series of things that have to do with self-regulation. We're going to look at what those are in just a minute, but they are the way that a brain functions. And often we will attribute people's lack of being able to do time management, for instance, to the fact that they just are inattentive, or they are lax, or they are any number of things, when in fact they may not have executive functioning skills, internal brain function that assists them in the self-regulation and planning that they need. Or sometimes we have all this paperwork. I know that adult basic education doesn't, but in other WIOA programs, there's a lot of paperwork to fill out, and case managers will complain that people don't bring in all the documents. And they'll say, again, I don't understand why people just don't follow the checklist that we gave them about the documents they need to bring in. And I say because they don't have executive functioning skills. If I wanted to get into a program and somebody told me the 27 documents I had to bring, I would go home, I would find them all, I would put them in a file, the file would be labeled, and I would bring the file back all organized and show it to the case manager, and we'd be well on our way. I don't need the program because I have that skill set. So I did this once in a training, and one of the case managers said, "Oh my God, Lori, that's why the young people I'm working with bring their documents in kind of one at a time." Of course, this was pre-pandemic when you could bring it in, and I said, that's right, because they've learned their own kind of workaround, which is they found the document, they're going to bring it in when they have it because they know they're going to lose it or something's going to happen to it. And so executive functioning is a key set of skills for internal development. There's a great video. If we have time at the end, we're going to watch it. It's like 4 minutes, but I want to just make sure we get through everything and I hear from people. And people are sharing resources in the chat. And so I just want to make sure that people are looking in the chat as folks are sharing resources. I saw Daniel said you're limited in your web or technology resources for some things, but and then others are sharing about ONET, et cetera. So the other 3 sets of things that people need as internal development is grit, resilience, and self-efficacy. And I think we can build those things into our programs. Certainly we start working with somebody who's 18 or 40, we're not going to be able to make anything go away, but we can certainly build in these abilities and help people obtain them. So if we can go to the next. Oh yeah, and Mo, that's right. People need assistance building a future sketch, a mind picture. It's absolutely true. Visualizing the future. And if we go back to career pathways, if you can help people see that there are many steps along this pathway, and getting your welding certification is really just a first step to a potential pathway in construction or manufacturing, or getting some of those things, creating a vision board, absolutely. So let's move on to the next slide, Janice, if we could.
Sure.
So executive functioning skills, that's the first. We're talking about 4 things that people need beyond just the external skills that people need. Executive functioning, organizing, prioritizing, monitoring and self-regulation, memory and short-term recall, focus, sustaining ability to shift task attention. That is all based on brain research again. And I think that in our programs, and this is what employers are asking for too. You know, we used to call some of this critical thinking, problem solving. Those are still skills, but these are some of the foundational or enabling skills that get you to critical thinking and problem solving and some of those others. And so, you know, building in ways for people to prioritize work. So if we're in a classroom setting and there's multiple things that you want your learners to work on, ask them on a list of 3 or 4 things to prioritize so that you can integrate and embed prioritization as part of the curriculum for getting to the module or the thing that needs to get done. Or help people understand this week, what is it that you have to get done this week, and make a list with them and then ask them to prioritize and give you the rationale for why some things are more important than others. Focused attention, supporting people to keep focused on what they're working on, and giving great feedback, support and feedback when you're observing people in the classroom. We should also be building these skills, the opportunity to get these skills when they're in a work-based learning environment. So executive functioning, there's a lot of great research out there about executive functioning. There's not a lot of great curriculum unless somebody has found something great. But there are some things, but even having people do a little self-reflection and a self-assessment. You could take this list, this simple list of executive functioning skills, turn it into some little kind of checklist, and just sit with somebody and ask them to self-reflect what they think they're good at on this list, you could change the words around if they have a lower level of reading, and what they need to work on, just to even make it self-evident. I work with young people who are at risk, 18 to 24, and just giving them kind of this sense that these are skills and that they're not deficient because they can't focus, or they're not deficient because they can't prioritize, but that it is something to be aware of and to learn about, makes them really feel empowered, I have to say. So we've just created a little tiny checklist, and my case managers sit with young people and talk to them about these skills. I'm going to move on, but does anybody have any questions or comments about executive functioning? All right, I'm moving on then. The next kind of set of internal skills that people need to have is self-efficacy. And this goes to the, oh, thanks, Peg. I love that graphic. Self-efficacy is self-confidence in one's ability to accomplish and succeed in organizational tasks. I think most of us know that some of the populations that we work with, not everyone, but some of the populations don't have a lot of self-confidence. And I think that goes to the comment that somebody made earlier about giving people a picture of what their future could be, and then providing real support about you can do it. You may not be able to do it today, but really building people's self-confidence in the work that we do. And so even when we put people out on work-based learning, with work-based learning opportunities, I think we need to be training supervisors to help be good mentors and coaches that will help build one's confidence that they are getting positive feedback about their ability to, in the yes you can, as opposed to the no you can't or I never will. And even yes you can, no matter what the challenges are that your circumstances present. Yes you can, and we're here to help you, but yes you can. So executive functioning skills, self-efficacy, and then Janice, the next slide. Resiliency, again, the ability to bounce back when there's been adverse circumstances. It's in a program, it's hard to really build resiliency, but we need to support resiliency. So a lot of this is about how we support people on their path as they're on their journey. And so I know all of you have students or job seekers who have, you know, every day there's some circumstance, there's some barrier that really would put many of us, me included, under my bed, rolled up in a fetal position. But our job is to really say to people, this is bad, no doubt about it, but how are you going to bounce back? And I really believe in using that language. You need to be resilient. You need to be able, so how can we create a plan where you can get around this and bounce back? Yeah, Janice, that was great. Teach them the power of yet. I don't know it yet, as opposed to I don't know it and I'm deficient in it in some kind of way. I love that as well. But if we're going to have employees of the future, and the future is here today, they need to have executive functioning skills. They need to have resiliency. And the next slide, they need to have grit. And grit is the ability to stick to it. It's an important driver of success, and it is really about being gritty and knowing that you can, again, be resilient, but also that you need to stick to it. So I'm interested in anybody's kind of thoughts about how you support, maybe not teach, but support executive functioning skills, grit, resiliency, or self-efficacy in your programs. Anybody? Come on, folks.
I'll talk again if you want me to.
I do, Daniel. I'm so happy to have anybody that you've always said good things. So why not? Go ahead.
Well, specifically during the pandemic, we've had a lot of support with technology. We've had all the teachers have what they call office hours, where they have an hour out of, maybe 2 hours out of each day, where the students can plan to meet with the teacher one-on-one to talk about basically anything that's going on in their life. Ideally, it's focused around the class, but sometimes it's not.
Right.
And then we've also have staff support for specific technology. And that's any student that's either having problems with their own computer or doesn't have a computer and wants to borrow a computer from the school. They come in and they borrow a computer, and the teacher or the staff member teaches them how to access Zoom, how to access Padlet, how to access Google Drive, Google Sites, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then that's been a huge support. And then we've also had our childcare ladies, who obviously can't be doing childcare right now, but they've been really supportive with the CASAS testing and also supportive of the students.
Yeah, so that's a great way to support grit and resiliency in terms of having someone who helps you so that you don't just say, well, I don't have a computer or my computer broke, and just walk away, right? You're providing the support to help people continue to be gritty and continue to be resilient. So I love what Terry's saying in the chat too. If you want to get to executive functioning skills, just asking them what subject they want to work on first is helping them think that they have the power to prioritize some things. I think that's great. Teachers teach to never quit when you fail or hit a hurdle. It's also about helping them understand, though, how to think through that hurdle. So these things about like resiliency, don't ever quit, but executive functioning skills are part of being resilient, because I may not want to quit, but I may not have the planning skills or the task management skills to think through what are the steps I need to take to get myself out of this or over this or around this. And so what happens is they want to be gritty, they want to stick to it, but they don't know how to because they don't have the skill set. And so part of my message to all of us, and I can include myself, working with young people and people at risk and those who may be immigrants just coming to this country and even offenders, is that for some people, they may just not want to do these things, but a lot of people don't have the skills or the aptitude, and it's our job not to put them in the bucket of, well, they just gave up. I may have just given up because I don't know what else to do. Anybody else want to weigh in here? Do I have any?
There's some great comments in the chat, Lori, if you have a chance.
Yes, I'm looking at them. I'd love people to speak up, though.
I'll speak up.
Great.
Kathy Fry. This makes me think actually not just of my work, but also of my son. When my son was in college, he was out, I come from Massachusetts, and he was out hiking in the woods late at night with a group of friends. And there was a snowstorm and a tree fell on him, and it broke 6 vertebrae. And he was taken out of college, and he became very depressed. But he always had this motivator, like, that I didn't know about, but soon learned when I found under his bed, because I had to clean under his bed and take care of everything as doctors and physical therapists were visiting us. He had 2 things. 1, he had an empty whiskey bottle. 2, he had all these brochures from the National Outdoor Leadership School. And so we focused on, what does he want to do? That whiskey bottle wasn't a healthy thing. And he went from having a broken back to working with a physical therapist, setting his mind to it, because I promised him that he would go to Knowles. And it made the whole difference, because I listened and I focused on what does he want, and I didn't care about the cost. But not always, not everybody has the ability to not care about the cost, but there are resources out there. And the, you know, really listening to the individual and putting our own wants and needs aside, whether we are a parent or somebody working with a student, it's extremely important.
So thank you, Kathy, for that story. It's not only putting our own needs and wants aside, but also putting our own lens aside, right? Don't you think? I mean,
Right.
in your story, your lens could have focused on the bottle or on the fact that he was exploring something else, right? And
Right.
in our programs, sometimes our lens is a very, you know, kind of how I would do things. You know, again, how come they don't have a file with all the paperwork in it, all organized and bring it back? We gave them a checklist. And how come they're not using the checklist? Or the lens being, they must just be lazy because we told them what to do. And one of my points is that these internal resources need to be supported, especially executive functioning. I mean, your story about your son is great, and he had you to help him plan it out. What is it you want to do? But just asking people what they want to do, telling them here's the career pathway and expecting that they might know how to take the next steps is a skill set. It's
Right.
not just an attitude or an aptitude. It might be just about an attitude, but I start with it's a skill set. It's an internal set of skills around executive functioning.
And that skill set needs to be developed, and
Absolutely.
that skill set needs support. Whoever is providing that support. I mean, what they say about resiliency is that you need at least one person supporting you. So whoever that one person might be.
That's right. Whether it's a teacher or I mean, you know, we all have people that we in our programs that we support, and then years later, I mean, I just had an experience recently of an office assistant in one of the workforce boards I was a consultant in 15 years ago, and I just thought she had such capacity, and so I just took her under my wing and was mentoring her. And she moved up in that workforce board, and I haven't heard from her in 5 years. And she just called me the other day out of the blue to tell me that she had just gotten a job as an executive director of a workforce board in California, right?
Mhm.
Had nobody else that was supporting her. Nobody, she would have been an office assistant the whole time. I mean, a very good agency, but she didn't have a degree. So that's what she was. But I thought she was so smart, and we just worked together, and she went to college, and now she's going to be an executive director. Peg, you have your hand up. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Just wanted to add quick, because I administrate a department, but I have been in the classroom for many, many years. And a few years ago, it came to the point where I had to go back in the classroom. So I had administration and I had to teach students in my own department. So here I come because I'm co-teaching now in front of or alongside of my people who are my subordinates, so to speak, HR. So I started with 12 students, and I thought, you know, a lot of pressure on me. We got to get the gains, we got to get the HSE, everything. And I was teaching very low level ABE students. And if I start with 12, I should not end with 12 because some are getting their diploma along the way. Within the first week, Lori, I lost one. She fell homeless, and I don't know what happened to her. She was, you know, kind of in a precarious situation. Another one was abused and bruised and hospitalized in and out by someone in her own family. She relocated to Florida. The third one got into jail. So now, instead of a group of 12, now I have a group of 9, but I still have to get those gains. So I had a person came in like maybe 15, 20 minutes late the first day. I took him aside, talked to him, 9 o'clock start, got to get here. I'm working third shift at Amazon in the warehouse, on and on. I said, that's great. Talk to them. You have 9 o'clock class, so you got to get here. Second day, he didn't come in again. Now I called him out in front of the whole class and said, look, this is 3 hours. You're here tomorrow, or I'm locking the door and you're not coming in. Third day, and every day after, he came in on time. And he was the first of the group to get his diploma. And sometimes I would not only have my full-time job of administration, in addition to the teaching, I took just like 20 minutes out of my afternoon and I called the entire list of students on the phone. I called them, said, glad you showed up on time today. Glad you handed in that essay. Glad you worked with that math problem until, you reached the solution of it. Glad you worked together with your group today. Something like that. I had a couple of minors in there. One of their mothers answered the phone and said, what are you calling? What did he do? I said, he didn't do anything. I'm calling to say a positive thing. No, that's not true. Somebody never calls for that. I said, well, I'm not somebody. This is me.
It's so
And
great.
my point is, it really helped to build that cohort of learners who ultimately took it upon themselves to reach out to each other, make sure they were all coming to class, make sure they all worked through. That's my stellar group of learners who went from arithmetic to doing a 16-step problem at the end of our session. Within 3 months of the end of that session, all of them had their HSE diploma but one. And
That is
it
so great.
took time, it took energy, it took, okay, let's go over and touch that person on the back because he could do this problem and we want whatever he has to rub off on us. And it's just, making a big deal out
Absolutely.
of them every single day.
And those are the kinds of things that support grit, right? Some people
Absolutely.
have never had positive feedback. They've never had anybody say, good job. They've never had anybody, not because they have parents or partners or husbands or wives that don't care, but it's because people just don't know how to give that positive feedback. People don't share that happened. And that builds grit and resiliency, Peg. And so we all need to be doing that in our programs. It takes time, there's no doubt about it, but that's who we are supposed to be. We're supposed to be those people who support and provide. And I'm trying to give you language that it's not just a nice thing to do. It's not just nice that Peg called all the students and gave them positive feedback. It builds the skills that the internal resources of grit, resiliency, and self-efficacy, being able to give positive attribution, to move away from a deficit model that we tend to have in programs and really move towards an asset model. What is it you do really well and you can do it? And positive reinforcement makes me want to come back the next day. That's grit, right? I mean, that's grit.
And that's it. And it's not, I'm not saying that because I'm any special type of person or anything. These are just elements that I found that happen to work. And I see Dan said some people might quit, if you enforce a 9 o'clock start time. Well, then they can register for a different time of class. But when
I don't mean to interrupt, but on that comment alone, here's what I would say to that. There is a balance between somebody said tough love and what Peg said, you have to be here. And now we get back to executive functioning. Maybe the person doesn't know how to prioritize their time. Maybe they don't know how to think in their heads. This is executive functioning, not just being a lackard. They don't know how to accommodate in their heads that the Amazon warehouse is only 10 minutes away from the ABE school. I'm making this up, but it never takes 25 minutes to get there. Never, because of traffic, because of this, because of that. So how do we then teach them what is the barrier to getting here at 9 o'clock? I get that you're working, but what time is work off? How long does it take you to get here? Maybe you should register for a different time or a different class. That's helping somebody work through the planning, prioritization, and those skills of executive functioning. So it's not bad to say, here's the time the class starts. But it also is about then understanding that executive functioning is what this person may not have. And so let me ask you, what are the barriers to getting here? She asked some, he said Amazon, etc. But digging deeper. So you work at Amazon with time to get off. Well, the class starts a half an hour after you get off. How long does it take you to get here? Well, there's always traffic. Okay, well, is there a different route or is there a different class at a different time that would be better for you? So that's some of the focusing in on the skill set and not just the behavior. I would say. So Peg, thanks for that story. I want to move us on just
Thank you, Lori. Yes.
a little bit more to the next slide, and then we'll get ready to be adjourning here. So a lot of the kinds of skills, so two buckets. One is the internal resources that somebody needs to really be able to be successful and be good at the workplace. And that's the 4 sets: executive functioning, grit, resiliency, and self-efficacy. Then there is this essential workplace skills as well. And in the old days and still today, some people call them soft skills. I do not. I hate the language of soft skills. I think they make them secondary to the technical skills that somebody needs. So we have tried to change the language in the workforce world, and we are calling them essential workplace skills. They are essential skills. They're not just nice to have skills. And that's what soft skills tends to indicate. Again, I'm speaking generically. It may not be so in your work world or in the programs. So this list of essential workplace skills comes from a lot of research that Strumpf Associates has done with employers, with some of the research papers that have been written about the future of work, about what the skills gap is, et cetera. And these become the essential workplace skills for the new workplace. And the new workplace is the workplace that will have more automation, the workplace that will have more AI, the workplace that will be, even if we're virtual, be more teams and figuring out how to, not teams, the platform, but working in teams. And so creativity, emotional intelligence, analytical thinking, active learning, judgment and decision-making, interpersonal skills, leadership skills, diversity and cultural intelligence, technology skills, embracing change, and digital skills literacy. So there is a difference between technology skills and digital skills. Some of you talked about it as technology skills, and I've also been talking about it as digital skills. Technology is, can you use the equipment? Digital skills is, do you know what the value is and how to make it work for you, and how to have like this, like how do you make this work in a digital environment, not just the technology piece of it. And so, no, these are not, Janice, these are not ranked order in order of importance. If I was smarter, I would have put them in alphabetical order, and I probably didn't think of doing that. So they're really not rank ordered, but one of the things that we do in local areas, Strumpf Associates, my firm, we will take this skill set and we'll create like a checklist, and we'll create a little survey, not a survey that you send out, but we do lots of focus groups with employers, and we'll ask in the local region, which of these skills do you need to have to begin? And which of these skills do you need to have to advance? And we do it by sector. So we may bring manufacturers in, for instance, and have a focus group with a set of manufacturers where we have this skill set. They've got it on a piece of paper, and it's written in a checklist form. And then there's a column that says, need to know to begin, need to know to advance. And then we talk about which jobs they have, and then which of the jobs do you need these to begin? Do you need these to advance? And do they have others? Now you'll note that on this list, I do not have the typical, oh, you have to be able to show up on time. You have to be able to write a resume. You have to fill out an application. Those are critical skills that people need to get a job, no doubt about it. But I think of those as under the line of sight. Again, we're change management consultants. So in organizations, there's known things that are under the line of sight and above the line of sight. Under the line of sight are foundational enabling skills. If somebody doesn't know how to do a resume, yes, we need to teach them. If somebody doesn't know how to do an application online, yes, we need to teach them. If somebody doesn't know how to get to work on time, yes, we absolutely need to teach them, which goes back to Peg's story about if we're not modeling it in the classroom, they're not going to model it at work necessarily. This is the above the line of sight skills. This is what research is saying, and I'm sure post-pandemic, this list will hold, but there may be others that get added to it. This is it's not good enough to just show up on time, although many employers at this moment, because we have a worker shortage, are saying if they just would show up and stay at work, I would be happy to have them, but that's not going to last. That's not the only thing that they really need. And so Kathy said, yes, Kathy said, what a great list. I'd also add, Kathy, do you have a mic? Do you want to, before we get ready to adjourn here, I think that is a great idea. Can you talk a little bit how that struck you?
Just when I read these, I mean, I understand what each of these means, but some of our students or clients might not. So giving examples, if we were to provide, if we were to be working with somebody on essential workplace skills, and to really look at this, and I like your idea of it having it be alphabetical, because it was a little bit confusing. I was like, oh, okay, is this in order?
Yes. I just typed them up as a.
It's okay. It's okay. I just give some examples of what that might look like. What does creativity look like? So give a real life example. What does emotional intelligence look like? I mean, there's a lot to emotional intelligence, but yeah.
Absolutely.
So.
And I just want to add to that, and a great exercise with a alphabetized list would be to sit with them and ask them what they think the examples are, right? So first saying, if we said that one of the skills you need at work is creativity, what does that look like to you? And then adding your own in. I mean, that's another way to do it, right? Get them to think about what some of those examples are. So
I'm also working with a lot of second language learners, though.
Oh, okay, right.
That's essential.
All right. So, but for others, engaging the class. So I love that idea, and I will be better at redoing this list. But anyway, so I wanted to make sure that people don't have any kind of other questions or comments, and you can go to the website to get the early education career pathway. Think of visualizations that you can do. And instead of watching the video here, the link is in the PowerPoint. The video is from the Harvard School of Education and Early Childhood Development. And it's about the executive functioning skills. But I think that we are good for today. So does anybody have any final comments or questions that you want to either put in the chat, or any discussion you want to have out loud before we get ready to adjourn here? And Janice is going to ask you to do a evaluation at some point in a minute. But anybody else, anything else?
I just put the hyperlink for the career pathway into the chat if anybody wants to follow it from there.
Thank you, Janice. The Zoom octopus, I couldn't get to it. Thank you.
Oh, Peg, thank you for that. To add the skill sets into the Pathways program. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, well, we have just a couple more minutes, but I think if we've all been able to say our piece and have a good discussion, there's no reason to hold you. I really appreciate everybody for your time and attention in this manner of doing these workshops. And I think I'm going to turn this back over to Janice because she has a few other things to just tell you. And then I think we're adjourned.
Great. Thank you, Lori, so much for this presentation. I definitely enjoyed it. Please, we ask all the attendees, when you go back into Whova, there's a little box you can click on called Rate Session that provides feedback for the speaker. And it's a great way for CASAS to also know that you enjoyed the session. We thank you for joining us. And I'm going to stop recording now, and we hope to see you in the next sessions throughout the rest of the day today. Thank you, Lori.
Bye, everybody.